Welcome, the Lord's chosen. There are moments in life when the universe doesn't whisper. It stands up, folds its arms, and waits to see if you're finally ready to become who you were always meant to be. There's a strange truth most people never realize. According to psychologists, the human brain makes over 35,000 decisions every single day. Yet only a handful of those decisions actually shift the trajectory of a person's life. And here's the part people won't admit out loud. Most of us run on autopilot, recycling the same reactions, the same fears, the same patterns, hoping for a future we're too afraid to reach for. But then there are the rare ones, the outliers, the ones who make a single move so rooted in clarity, courage, and self-respect that even the unseen realm pauses. Your last move wasn't just a decision, it was a declaration. It carried the weight of every version of you that refused to break. Every silent night you held yourself together. Every boundary you were scared to set, but finally did. That's why it sent ripples beyond what you could see. Because chosen ones don't make loud entrances. They make undeniable shifts. No fireworks, no dramatic speeches. Just a quiet action so aligned that it becomes louder than explanation. And while the world was busy scrolling and comparing and pretending to be fine, you made a move that even the angels had to applaud. Not because it was flashy, but because it was finally true. And let's be honest, if angels really did give standing ovations, yours probably looked like a divine award show, wings flapping, halos tilted, and one angel in the back whispering, "About time," because even the celestial realm gets impatient. This is the moment people underestimate, the moment when a single decision becomes a spiritual turning point, the moment when your life begins to reorganize itself around your growth instead of your fear, the moment when you step out of the identity you inherited and into the identity you earned. So today we're diving into what actually happened beneath the surface of your last bold step, why it mattered, why it shifted things, and why it marked you as someone who doesn't just survive life, but reshapes it. Let's begin. Number one, you didn't choose the path. The path chose you first. People love to say they found their purpose, like purpose is something you can pick up off a shelf if you look long enough or pray hard enough or hustle louder than the next person. But the truth is far stranger and far deeper. Purpose is usually the one doing the choosing. Long before you felt ready, long before you understood yourself, long before you felt worthy of the life you're stepping into, something in you was already being pulled, shaped, angled toward a direction you couldn't name yet. When you finally made that last move, it felt sudden to you. It felt like bold courage in the moment. But it wasn't sudden at all. It was the result of dozens of tiny internal recognitions you ignored, swallowed, or dismissed as just thoughts. The discomfort you felt in certain spaces, the boredom that felt like suffocation, the irritation that told you were playing small, the restlessness that came even when life looked fine on the outside. Those weren't accidents, those were signposts. People confuse choice with destiny because they only see the final act, not the long invisible rehearsal. But that last move of yours, the one that shifted everything, it was not born in that moment. It had been brewing inside you for years. Your heart had been negotiating with your mind. Your instincts had been arguing with your fears. Your future self had been tapping you on the shoulder every time you felt oddly out of place. When you finally acted, you weren't stepping onto a new path. You were finally stepping onto the path that had been aligning itself under your feet the entire time. That's why it felt so relieving. That's why it felt so right even when it scared you. That's why it carried a weight and a clarity other decisions never had. And yes, it's funny in a cosmic way. Like you thought you were the smart one making a bold strategic move, when in reality, the universe was sitting there with popcorn saying, "We've been waiting for you to catch up." The beauty is this: once you stop fighting the pull and start trusting the direction, life stops feeling like a maze and starts feeling like a conversation. And that conversation is where chosen ones begin to rise. Number 2, you are rewarded for the battle no one saw you fight. Most people think victories are about what the world can witness: the announcement, the achievement, the applause, the photos, the "look at me now." But the truth is painfully simple and endlessly overlooked. The real rewards come for the battles no one ever saw, no one ever praised, and no one ever even guessed you were fighting. Every time you stayed calm when you wanted to explode. Every time you kept going when you were exhausted. Every time you swallowed pride to keep peace, or spoke up when silence would have suffocated you. Every time you carried pain in silence because you didn't want to burden anyone. Every time you protected your own peace even though it meant losing something or someone familiar. These things do not make headlines. They do not get likes. They do not get acknowledgement, even from the people closest to you. But they shape you in ways that public achievements can't touch. When you made that last move, it wasn't just a smart decision or a brave moment. It was the culmination of years of private discipline, years of telling yourself, just one more step, years of choosing integrity when convenience begged for betrayal, years of holding yourself together when you felt like you were unraveling in slow motion. People see the result and admire the outcome, but they miss the foundation. They miss the nights you prayed without speaking, the mornings you got up without hope but still stood anyway, the silent promises you made to yourself and actually kept, the maturity you built alone without witnesses. So when the universe rewarded you, when things aligned, opportunities opened, clarity arrived, or peace finally settled, it wasn't because you suddenly became worthy. It was because you had been proving your worth long before the spotlight ever flickered in your direction. And it's almost funny in a cosmic way. Everyone celebrates the move, but the real applause belongs to the unseen version of you who refused to quit when quitting would have been so easy. That's the hidden truth about growth. It's not the visible triumph that changes you. It's the invisible endurance. And when endurance finally meets action, even heaven can't sit still. Number 3, you took the unpaid route, and that's why you were backed. There's a hidden economy in life that most people never learn to read. The value of actions that pay nothing immediately, but pay everything eventually. When you made that last move, it didn't come with applause or instant results or reassurance from the crowd. It came with uncertainty. It came with loneliness. It came with that quiet feeling of walking in a direction nobody else could see the point of yet. Most people chase what feels good in the moment, what looks impressive, what earns validation, what keeps them comfortably understood. But you did something different. You chose the route that didn't promise a reward, didn't guarantee applause, and didn't even guarantee safety. You chose alignment over approval, integrity over convenience, and growth over applause. And that is exactly why forces beyond the visible take notice. Not because you were perfect or fearless, but because you acted without being paid. You didn't jump because someone told you it would pay off. You didn't jump because it would look good. You jumped because it was right. And that is a currency very few people ever spend. When you walk a path no one is cheering for, you're actually telling the universe something very loud. I trust myself enough to bet on me even when no one else is betting too. That kind of self-trust is magnetic. It reorganizes people, opportunities, conversations, and timing around you without you even chasing them. It's almost comical when you think about it. People hustle for applause like it's oxygen, yet you breathe deeper without it. You gave effort without applause, courage without witnesses, purpose without followers. And then they wonder why things started falling into place around you, as if it was coincidence. No, it wasn't coincidence, it was economy, it was spiritual math. When you pay with honesty, time, courage, discipline, and self-respect, the return may not come today or tomorrow, but it always comes. Not as a reward for being lucky, but as a return for being rare. So when you finally made that move, it wasn't just a choice, it was a deposit. And the standing ovation you felt, even if it came as peace or clarity or momentum, was simply the interest finally being paid. Because the unpaid route? It turns out it's the only route that never stays unpaid for long. Number 4, your last move closed a door that was slowly killing you. Leaving is one of the most misunderstood forms of courage. People think bravery looks like fighting, pushing, proving, staying, no matter how heavy the weight gets. But sometimes bravery looks exactly like walking away, not out of weakness, but out of survival, clarity, and deep respect for yourself. When you made that last move, you didn't just end a situation. You ended a slow erosion. You ended something that chipped at your confidence, your spirit, your sense of peace, your identity, even if you couldn't fully name it at the time. These things rarely break us all at once. They don't come like storms. They come like leaks, small, consistent, easy to ignore. And before long you wake up feeling tired, empty, confused, and guilty for wanting more than you're allowed to have. Closing that door wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but it was necessary in a way most people never admit to themselves. Life is too short to keep living in environments that whisper less when your soul is shouting more. The moment you walked away, you weren't throwing something away. You were reclaiming something. You were telling yourself that comfort is not the same as peace, familiarity is not the same as growth, and loyalty is not the same as self-neglect. Many people stay because leaving feels like betrayal. But staying when you're dying inside is the real betrayal, the betrayal of your own future. What makes this move so powerful is that it changes the rhythm of your whole life. Suddenly, your decisions get cleaner, your thinking gets sharper, your heart stops fighting itself every morning, your boundaries stop being invisible, your peace stops being negotiable. It's almost funny how people react when someone leaves something that no longer serves them. They say, "Why would you do that?" As if staying in pain is the moral high ground. No, the moral high ground is walking toward life. By closing that door, you didn't lose. You gained space, clarity, time, energy, and a chance to finally build something that can actually hold you instead of drain you. And that is why even unseen forces rise for that kind of move. Because choosing life over habit is the rarest courage of all. Number 5, you finally prioritized your original self over your performed self. Most people spend their entire lives polishing a version of themselves they hope the world will approve of, like they're walking around with a permanent audition tape playing on repeat. They smile when they're tired, agree when they're drowning, stay silent when they're burning. They perform because they're terrified that if they stop, they'll stop being loved, accepted, or seen. But something broke through in you when you made that last move, not in a destructive way, but in a liberating one. You stopped treating yourself like a project to be managed and started treating yourself like a truth worth honoring. You stopped asking, "Will they like this?" and started asking, "Is this me?" And that shift is rarer than people think. Your original self isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, it doesn't need a spotlight. It's quiet, steady, honest, and deeply tired of being edited out. It just wants room to breathe, room to speak, room to choose, room to fail, room to grow without being judged every step of the way. When you finally gave it that room, it felt like coming home to a place you'd forgotten you owned. The performed self can get you through social situations, can get you compliments, can even make you feel safe for a while. But it can't take you anywhere worth going. It can't build peace. It can't create fulfillment. It can't generate purpose. It can only keep you busy pretending. When you chose authenticity over performance, you didn't just make a decision, you rewired how you relate to life. Your relationships began to sort themselves out. The people who only loved the performance drifted away, and the ones who actually saw you stepped closer. Your goals became clearer because they weren't filtered through other people's expectations anymore. There's something almost humorous about it too. The world often acts shocked when someone stops performing and starts being real, like it's suddenly missing half its entertainment. But the truth is this: authenticity is not a rebellion, it's a return. It's you stepping back into yourself after years of borrowing costumes you never meant to keep. That last move mattered because it wasn't just about changing direction. It was about changing allegiance, switching from pleasing everyone else to protecting the most important person in your life, yourself. And that is the kind of shift that even silence can't compete with. Number 6, you shifted from pleasing to positioning. There's a moment in development that almost no one talks about because it's subtle, internal, and impossible to explain to someone who hasn't felt it. The moment you stop living for approval and start living for direction. Pleasing is reactive. It bends, adjusts, softens, hides, explains, apologizes. Positioning is proactive. It aligns, defines, declares, holds space, and moves with purpose, even when no one is watching. When you made that last move, you stepped out of the old pattern, where every decision was weighed against how it might make someone else feel, how it might look, how it might be judged. You stopped carrying other people's emotional comfort like it was your personal job description, and instead, you started carrying your own trajectory. People mistake positioning for selfishness because it doesn't come wrapped in applause or sweetness. But real positioning isn't about taking from anyone. It's about finally giving yourself what you've been denying: clarity, stability, direction, and trust in your own judgment. The shift is dramatic, even if it doesn't look dramatic on the outside. Inside, it's like going from walking with a puppet on your back to finally walking on your own 2 feet. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop editing your choices to fit someone else's narrative. You stop treating every boundary like a crime. Once you begin positioning, something interesting happens. People no longer make space for you. Space shows up around you because you're no longer shrinking to fit patterns that never belonged to you. It's also funny how freeing it feels. The first time you choose a direction without checking the crowd, it almost feels like getting caught doing something illegal, even though it's the most legal thing in the world. Your last move mattered because it wasn't about saying no. It was about saying yes. Yes to momentum. Yes to purpose. Yes to self-respect. Yes to being someone who moves with intention instead of hesitation. When you shift from pleasing to positioning, you stop being carried by life's currents and start steering your own ship. You stop reacting to the world and start shaping how the world interacts with you. And that kind of shift, it doesn't just change your path. It announces to everything around you that you're finally ready to lead your own story. Number 7, you broke a generational pattern without announcing it. Some changes don't come with fireworks or speeches. Some changes slip through time quietly, like someone opening a window in a room everyone thought was meant to stay stale forever. When you made that last move, you did something most people only dream about on their deathbeds. You broke a pattern that had been humming through your bloodline long before you were born. Generational patterns aren't always dramatic. They're subtle habits, emotional shortcuts, beliefs, fears, cycles of silence, cycles of overgiving, cycles of self-sabotage, cycles of staying where you're not respected, or leaving when you should stay. They're like invisible scripts passed down without permission, shaping choices even when no one can explain why they keep repeating the same mistakes. When you stepped differently, spoke differently, set a boundary, walked away, or stepped towards something aligned, you weren't just changing your own life. You were rewriting a rule that had been followed for decades without anyone questioning it. And you did it without applause, without social media declarations, without turning it into a motivational poster. That's what makes it powerful, because breaking a cycle isn't about being dramatic. It's about being disciplined. It's about being aware. It's about choosing growth when comfort is begging you to stay small. It's about tolerating being misunderstood by people who love you, but can't yet see what you see. Most people repeat what they know because it feels safe even when it hurts. You chose what you didn't know because it felt true even when it scared you. That's rare. That's spiritual. That's generational. And here's the wild part. The people who come after you will benefit without ever knowing what you did. They'll walk into relationships with healthier expectations. They'll choose paths with clearer purpose. They'll feel emotions they were taught to bury. They'll build lives with patterns that actually support them, all because you made one decision and didn't explain it to anyone. In a world obsessed with recognition, you delivered one of the greatest achievements possible and didn't even need a trophy. You changed the future simply by refusing to repeat the past. That is the kind of move that doesn't just get applause, it earns legacy. Number 8, you finally chose long-term peace over short-term comfort. Most people mistake comfort for happiness because comfort feels warm, familiar, and painless in the moment. But comfort can also be a trap, a gentle cage dressed up as safety. Peace, on the other hand, is deeper, steadier, and sometimes brutally uncomfortable at first. Peace demands truth. Peace demands boundaries. Peace demands courage. Comfort only demands that you stay. When you made that last move, you turned your back on the easy option and stepped toward the real one. You stopped asking, what will hurt the least today? And started asking, what will heal me tomorrow? That shift changes everything because it rewrites how you measure success, survival, and growth. Short-term comfort keeps you in places that don't respect you, relationships that drain you, habits that numb you, and conversations that shrink you. They feel safe not because they're good, but because they're known. Long-term peace, however, is built on understanding yourself enough to leave what harms you, even when it's familiar, even when it's loved, even when it's been a part of you for years. Choosing peace often feels lonely at first. You lose the warmth of familiarity without yet feeling the warmth of clarity. You question yourself. You miss people. You miss routines. You miss versions of yourself that you outgrew but still remember fondly. But slowly, almost quietly, something begins to return. Clarity, energy, joy, self-respect, space to breathe without feeling guilty. It's funny how people look at someone who chooses peace and say, "You've changed," like it's an accusation, when it's actually the greatest compliment they could give. You didn't choose isolation. You didn't choose coldness. You chose alignment. And alignment has a way of attracting the right people, the right opportunities, the right conversations, and the right growth. Not because you became lucky, but because you became available to what actually fits you. Short-term comfort is like eating candy for every meal. It feels good until it destroys your health. Long-term peace is like eating what nourishes you. It might not excite you at first, but it builds a life that can actually sustain you. Your last move mattered because it wasn't just a choice. It was a commitment to a future where you stop surviving and start living. And that kind of commitment is always worth a standing ovation. Number 9, you walked into a room. Your older self was too afraid to enter. There's a special kind of growth that doesn't look like progress on a chart or achievement on a resume. It looks like courage finally catching up to longing. When you made that last move, you stepped into a space, emotional, spiritual, professional, or personal, that the version of you from years ago would have backed out of without even opening the door. We all have rooms like that. Rooms built of dreams we dismissed, goals we labeled too much, conversations we told ourselves we weren't ready for, responsibilities we thought we couldn't carry, or truths we feared might change us forever. Those rooms sit in the background of our lives like silent reminders of who we wanted to be but didn't quite trust ourselves to become. Walking into one of those rooms is more than a decision. It's a reconciliation. It's telling your younger self, you were right to want this. I'm here now. I can do this. I can hold this. And that is powerful in ways people rarely articulate. What makes it even more extraordinary is that the fear that kept you out wasn't usually about the room itself. It was about who you thought you weren't yet. You thought you needed more confidence, more skill, more permission, more time, more proof. But the truth is brutal and beautiful. You only ever needed to walk in. Growth isn't waiting until you feel ready. Growth is proving to yourself that readiness is something you create by showing up. When you crossed that threshold, you didn't just gain access to a new opportunity or perspective. You gained trust, self-trust, the kind that changes how you make every future decision. Suddenly, the next room isn't as terrifying. The next dream isn't as impossible. The next boundary isn't as heavy. There's also something deliciously humorous in it. You spend years building excuses like they're architectural masterpieces, and then one brave step collapses the whole structure in seconds. Your last move mattered because it honored a promise you made to yourself long before you understood it. To grow, to face, to evolve, to stop letting fear define the outline of your life. Walking into that room wasn't just progress, it was proof. Proof that you are capable of more than you ever allowed yourself to imagine. And that the courage you thought you lacked was always waiting for the right moment to be used. Number 10, you acted like someone who has nothing to prove anymore. There's a quiet power people rarely notice because it isn't flashy, isn't loud, and certainly isn't dramatic. The power of having nothing left to prove. Most people spend their lives in a constant performance, proving they're enough, proving they're worthy, proving they're smart, proving they're lovable, proving they're capable. They chase validation like it's a basic human nutrient, forgetting it was never meant to be their main source of strength. When you made that last move, something in you finally stopped auditioning for roles you were already qualified for. You spoke without over-explaining. You walked without apologizing. You chose without begging for understanding. You carried yourself like someone who finally understood a truth that blows most people's minds when they hear it. Value isn't earned through performance. It's recognized through presence. Acting like someone who has nothing to prove doesn't mean arrogance. It means clarity. It means you've measured yourself enough times to know your own weight. You know where you stand. You know what you can handle. You know what you won't tolerate anymore. And because you no longer feel the need to convince anyone else. When you stop proving, you start attracting. People can feel it, that grounded energy, that calm certainty, that refusal to scramble for approval. It changes conversations, it changes dynamics, it changes how people treat you, because it changes how you treat yourself. And here's the funny part. The moment you stop proving yourself, people suddenly get impressed. Not because you became better, but because you became real. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't make a scene. You didn't issue threats or dramatic declarations. You simply acted from a place of internal confidence. and that sent louder signals than any grand gesture ever could. Your last move mattered because it wasn't about winning something in the external world. It was about winning something internal, the battle against the invisible jury you've been carrying around for years. When you stop living under that jury's gaze, life becomes easier, cleaner, more aligned, more peaceful, and far more powerful. Acting like someone who has nothing to prove is not just a mindset, it's a transformation. And once you cross into it, you never go back. Number 11, you demonstrated mastery over your impulse, not your image. Most people spend their energy polishing how they look on the outside, how calm they seem, how wise they sound, how unbothered they appear. They curate impressions like they're decorating a living room meant for strangers. But the real work, the kind that actually changes a life, happens deeper than that. It happens when you stop letting your impulses run the show and start deciding which ones get the mic. When you made that last move, you didn't just act. You mastered yourself in a way most people never even attempt. Impulses are powerful. They're fast, emotional, instinctive. They want immediate relief, say the harsh truth, exit the situation in anger, chase the quick comfort, defend your ego, make it about you, react, react, react. Image is easy. Anyone can pretend to be patient for a camera or a crowd. But impulse mastery? That's private. That happens when no one is watching, when you're tired, when you're triggered, when you're feeling small, when you have every reason to explode or withdraw or numb yourself or lash out. And yet, you didn't. You paused. You chose. You stayed aligned. You acted with intention instead of reflex. That kind of self-command changes your trajectory more than any external achievement ever could, because it rewrites how you engage with the world. You start making wiser decisions, not because you suddenly became smarter, but because you stopped letting raw emotion hijack the steering wheel. There's something almost comedic about it too. People get applauded for looking composed, but the real heroes are the ones who manage not to say the thing that would have burned down the whole conversation. The ones who swallow pride instead of swallowing peace. The ones who choose growth over instant satisfaction. When you master impulse, you gain control over outcomes without fighting for them. Your relationships stabilize, your mind calms, your self-respect rises, your decisions stop being accidents and start being architecture. Your last move mattered because it wasn't about impressing anyone. It wasn't even about being good or mature or spiritual in some social media friendly way. It was about being sovereign in your own inner world. And when a person becomes the master of their impulses, they stop being pushed around by life and start moving through it with purpose. That is real power. Silent, unseen, and absolutely transformative. Number 12, you trusted timing instead of trying to control it. There's a kind of maturity that isn't about knowledge or skill or ambition. It's about learning when to stop forcing what isn't ready yet. Most people treat time like a stubborn door they can kick open if they get angry enough or loud enough or busy enough. They rush, they panic, they chase, they push, they compete with clocks that aren't even theirs. When you made that last move, you did something almost radical in a world addicted to urgency. You trusted timing. Not blindly, not passively, but with a patient confidence that says, I'm preparing, I'm aligning, I'm stepping when it's right, not when I'm desperate. Timing is one of the greatest teachers because it forces humility. It reminds you that effort isn't the same as forcing, that commitment isn't the same as panic, that progress isn't always measured in speed, but in precision. When you stop fighting time, you start feeling it work for you instead of against you. Opportunities start showing up with less resistance. Conversations land at the right moment. People enter when you're ready to meet them. Lessons arrive when you can finally hear them. Every impatient push you avoided, saved you days of frustration you didn't even know you would have felt. Every moment you waited instead of reacting gave clarity that no amount of anxiety could have bought. It's almost funny how people brag about being in a hurry, as if that's a virtue, when all it really proves is that they don't trust their own process. You trusted yours, and that trust made your last move land perfectly, like a key sliding into a lock it was designed for. That doesn't mean everything became easy. Trusting timing isn't about comfort. It's about courage. The courage to sit with uncertainty without letting it eat you alive, to take action without demanding immediate results, to stay steady when everything inside you is urging you to sprint. Your last move mattered because it came from that calm space where preparation meets opportunity. You didn't arrive late, you didn't arrive too early. You arrived exactly when you were supposed to. And when a person learns to honor timing like that, something shifts forever. Life stops feeling like a race and starts feeling like choreography. That is when progress stops being loud and starts being inevitable. Number 13, you chose alignment over attention. In a world built on visibility, most people chase attention like it's oxygen. They post, perform, compete, flex, exaggerate, pretend, anything to feel seen for a moment. But attention is a cheap currency. It can be bought with noise, gimmicks, emotional bait, or even self-betrayal. Alignment, however, alignment is priceless. Alignment is invisible to the crowd, but unmistakable to the soul. When you made that last move, you did something most people would never dare. You chose what felt right over what would look impressive. You chose integrity over applause. You chose direction over distraction. Alignment is quiet work. It asks difficult questions. Does this fit who I am becoming? Does this support my peace? Does this feed my purpose? Does this take me somewhere I actually want to go? Attention never asks those questions. Attention just says, will they notice? And if you've ever lived long enough chasing attention, you already know the cost. Burnout, confusion, comparison, hollow achievements, relationships built on empty impressions, and a constant feeling of being seen but never understood. But alignment changes the entire game. When you act from alignment, you stop needing external confirmation because you feel internally correct. You stop wasting energy on performance because you're too busy building something real. There's a kind of humor in it, too. People will stare at someone who stops seeking attention like they've suddenly turned invisible, while that person is quietly becoming more powerful than they ever were with the spotlight. Your last move mattered because it wasn't driven by ego. It wasn't driven by fear of being forgotten, overlooked, or underestimated. It was driven by coherence, that satisfying click when your actions finally match your values, your desires, and your vision. When alignment hits, life stops feeling like a juggling act and starts feeling like a straight line. You attract the right people without begging. You get opportunities without chasing. You feel fulfilled without performing. Attention fluctuates. Alignment accumulates. The applause fades. The growth stays. By choosing alignment, you didn't just make a decision. You set a trajectory that will shape years, maybe decades, of your life. And that is the kind of move that no audience can reward, but every version of you, past and future, will forever thank. Number 14, you proved that growth isn't loud, but it is decisive. People love dramatic stories of transformation, the explosions, the tears, the grand declarations, the before and after photos. But real growth rarely announces itself with fireworks. Real growth moves like water, slow, steady, persistent, reshaping everything it touches without ever needing to shout. When you made that last move, it didn't come wrapped in hype. It didn't require a crowd to validate it. It didn't need a motivational speech to justify it. It simply changed the direction of your life with the quiet authority of someone who finally understood themselves. Growth isn't about impressing the world. It's about outgrowing the version of you that kept you trapped. It's about making a choice that feels small to others but monumental to your own heart. It's about stepping away from comfort, pattern, and insecurity, not because it looks good, but because it feels necessary. Most people confuse growth with intensity. The louder, the better, the harder, the more dramatic, the more transformational it must be. But intensity without clarity is just chaos dressed up as progress. Growth without decisiveness is just longing without movement. Your last move mattered because it was decisive. You didn't half-step. You didn't wait for permission. You didn't ask for correction, reassurance, or applause. You acted with a clean certainty that comes only when insight finally meets courage. There's a reason decisive moves feel different in the body. Your shoulders drop, your breathing steadies, your mind stops arguing, and something deep inside says, yes, this is it. That feeling is growth signing its name on your life. And here's the funny truth. People will often miss it entirely. They'll keep looking for the big spectacle while the real change is happening quietly in the background, rearranging your future like a master architect who doesn't need an audience. But you felt it, you know it, you can't unfeel it. That last move didn't just alter a situation. It rewired a trajectory. It told the old you served me, but you're done now. And it told the new you, let's go. Growth isn't loud, but it always leaves a mark. When a person grows decisively, life has no choice but to make room for them. And that is why even the unseen rise to applaud. When you look back at all these moves, all these shifts, all these quiet revolutions inside you, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Being chosen isn't about destiny tapping you on the shoulder with dramatic lightning. It's about you showing up differently, acting differently, deciding differently, and honoring yourself in ways most people are too afraid to attempt. Chosen ones aren't born. They're revealed through discipline, through honesty, through courage, through peace, through alignment, and through the willingness to walk away from anything that asks them to abandon their own truth. They're revealed in the battles no one saw, in the rooms they finally entered, in the patterns they broke without applause, and in the calm certainty they carried when the whole world told them to stay small. Every move you made mattered not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Every choice mattered not because it was loud, but because it was decisive. Every step mattered not because it was easy, but because it changed you. And when a person changes in that way, when their actions finally match their purpose, even forces beyond sight can't help but stand. Not for the achievement, but for the courage it took to get there. So if you felt even a spark of recognition while listening, if something inside you whispered, "This is me," then maybe the standing ovation isn't for what you did, but for who you're becoming. Thank you for spending this moment with me. If this video spoke to you, don't forget to subscribe, drop a like, leave a comment with what hit you the most, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Because the journey gets lighter when we walk it together. Until next time, stay chosen, stay blessed always.